People should learn how to play Mace. He's a good commander.
Artanis, where do we have him?
Artanis. So I feel like he might well just be the best army commander that there is here. Because Dragoons are so remarkably resilient that the only way you're going to outperform Dragoons is by having the vastly superior option of buildings. So it's like he is the best of the bad ideas.
So
yeah, you're basically just going to be like, you have strong top bar, you have a unit that is super military resilient. The only problem is, so here's the deal. I say Dragoons are mutated resilient. That's half true. They are completely fine against power overwhelming. Dragoons have major problems with the Broodlings. So you're going to need Zealots. Now the Zealots are going to die a lot. So what's going to happen is basically this. You're going to have a blob of Dragoons. You're going to attack him out of a blob of Dragoons. And you're just going to put the power field on top of your army, and you cannot use P2 at this point, because that's just going to go horribly wrong, because you can't move your power field around freely. And you're just going to warp in Zealots as you're killing enemies, because otherwise, if you don't have those spin lots killing Broodlings, you're just going to die.
Well, this also will die regardless, but sure, point taken.
No, it's either A, you lose a couple of Zealots to kill all the Broodlings, or B, you lose all your Dragoons and everything dies and you're dead.
All right,
that is literally the alternative, because Broodlings are a problem. Dragoons need 3 shots to kill a Broodling because they're light.
So
it's really painful. So
where do we have him?
He's probably the top of B.
B? That's really high. Well,
Dragoons are really safe against power overwhelming. You just have to remember to have those expendable Zealots, because otherwise the number of Broodlings you can handle is surprisingly small.
Okay, how about you, Tutu?
Oh man, this is not good. I used P1 Zealot High Templar.
That would also work.
I did the same thing as I did for the previous Temple of the Past, which was the Just Die one.
Yeah.
Which is you spin and storm everything.
Yeah.
Temple of Rebirth, that's the one.
Okay.
So yeah, you spin and storm everything, but it's just like, I don't know, if the enemy comp is not favorable, you're gonna die. So
I think so too.
I feel like he's not a good choice at all. So I put him in E.
Ooh.
Pretty much like army-based dudes are just gonna like suffer a lot.
I have him in D personally, but like, yeah, I don't think he's good either. I was thinking Archon dudes, like staggered Archon dudes. Wave 1 use 2, and then use the last 3 on the second wave, and then for the hybrid use like 3 on the first hybrid, and the 7-minute wave you use the rest of the Archon dudes. That's probably
personally, if I'm using P3 on Temple, I usually use Shield Overcharge on the first wave, because that's plenty enough, and that's half the energy cost of Archon dudes.
That's logical. Yeah,
and then I use Solar Bombardment on the second wave, because that's at exactly 5 minutes, and the big scary wave is at 10 minutes. So if I use my Solar Bombardment right away, as soon as it's off cooldown, it'll be up again for the big thing that I would have to save it. It's basically use it on the second wave, or save it for that wave, because you're going to need it either way for the 10-minute wave. So I might as well fire it at the second wave.
Okay. I don't see how that's... I don't know. I don't see how that's...
I am surprised. So, Zealot Templar... Yeah, the problem with that is that the Templar are going to have to not get stunned. Also, with favorable comp... My experience using P1 Artanis in the past has been P1 Artanis. The whole point of P1 Artanis is to change Zealot Templar from comp specific to works against literally everything. That's been my experience of P1 at least. But then I suppose that against some comps it might become a little more expensive, and you might have a hard time keeping up with all the waves. Yeah. However, it would be less painful in non-solo fashion, because it's literally the Zagara paradox, where it's just like, okay, it seems really painful when you're soloing because you just run out of pay to kill. But if there were just 20% fewer enemies, even, you would be completely fine. So it's like, eh. And that's if you use Zealot Templar, which I don't like to recommend Zealot Templar unless it's absolutely necessary, because even though it's a very potent and versatile tool, it's also relatively difficult to use.
Yeah.
So I usually recommend people use it when necessary, not just liberally, even though I use it quite a lot, because it requires a lot of very on top of control. Whereas Dragoons is just, you place the power field on top of your Dragoons, you warp in a couple Zealots, and actually, what I realized after I finished my part and Tutu started talking is the alternative to those Zealots, if you're too lazy to or not confident in your ability to keep remembering to warp in Zealots, you just put a couple Reavers behind your Dragoons and they deal with the Broodlings just fine. And that's it's a renewable Zealot source.
I guess
the only problem is that it costs gas instead of minerals.
I guess a big reason why our rankings are so varied is because of the power overwhelming. It's such a wild card that you can either get such non-factor spells that your stuff survives just fine, or you can get black hole, seeker missile, fungal, and stuff that just annihilate everything you have. So, yeah.
The biggest advantage of Dragoons then is just the fact it's most spells don't break Dragoon shields with the shield regen in combat, and if they do, Dragoons still are reasonably durable.
They become really sad with point defense drones.
Not really, to be honest, because Dragoons are still a small enough unit with a high enough attack speed. They are not they're barely more sad than Hydralisks.
Hydra's also really, really sad.
Really? You would think so?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that big a problem, to be honest, because 1 point defense drone, once you're a big blob of Dragoons, 1 point defense drone, it isn't even enough to block one volley.
Well, you have to get to that big blob of Dragoons first before you can.
Okay, but in the early game, you can just top bar solo, worst case scenario, and best case scenario. The reality is, a point defense drone is 20 projectiles. Your Dragoons fire, every 1.5-ish seconds, was it? No, it was faster than that. The point is, your Dragoons should be able to choose through point defense drone pretty easily, the energy. And worst case scenario, if a wave has spit out a ton of point defense drones and it's actually a big scary wave, you just drop Archons on it and it dies. The Archons ignore point defense drone and everything dies. Broodlings die, Army dies, everything dies. The Archon dudes are good. Oh yeah, and that's another reason to use P3 here. Fun fact, a bunch of the spells from Power Overwhelming have this fun habit of ignoring Guardian Shell, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So,
funny.
I still don't think he's high enough to be B. I don't know. I'm still inclined to just say, hey, let's compromise with my choice with D, and then we can see
put
later.
him in C maybe. D just seems too low. Dragoons are so resilient compared to anything Abathur has.
Brutalists are more resilient, I think.
No. Yeah. If you get an enemy comp of Immortals and one Abduct goes off, that Brutalisk is gone.
That's situational,
it is
though.
Gone.
That's situational.
If the enemy comp is tanks and they are in siege mode and one stun spell goes off, that Brutalisk is gone.
Well, you're talking one Brutalisk versus an army of Dragoons. You have to compare
the Dragoons,
apples here.
Yeah, okay, 3 Brutalisks. Your Brutalisks are still, if they get hit by crowd control and the enemy has anti-armored units, those Brutalisks are gone. It kind of feels a bit more comp dependent with Abathur to me than Artanis, to be honest.
I guess that's true. The early game is so painful with Abathur.
I will admit the Dragoon thing is a bit comp dependent in that, if you end up with swarmy enemies, you have to go Zealot Templar either way. To be fair, the thing is, the comps that force you to go Zealot Templar are the ones where P1 is actually worse because the Storm already did enough damage, because the comps that are good that you need Zealot Templar for are the ones that are swarms of low health units. So P1 just makes them more expensive so that you can do overkill instead of just a nice cheap price to kill
Okay.
everything.
Okay, Tutu, make your case for E.
I think D is fine, but yeah. I already made my case, so
I think
I just think he's too comp dependent.
I also remember you mentioned before, Sticks Matter, that Artanis isn't a hammer; he's a surgical knife that you don't really fight for too long because you eventually trade out against Amon, who has unlimited money, and it's eventually gonna overwhelm you near the end. Near the end. So
Yeah, but the problem is that like this isn't minor evacuation, frankly. Which is just Artanis is so bad at infested maps. It's hard. It hurts. But like this is kind of a situation where every commander is going to have to trade with Amon because of power overwhelming. And between Shield Overcharge and Guardian Shell, this is basically a situation of Amon has managed to find a way to force every commander to trade, and for a lot of commanders, that's like, oh shoot, I don't know how to actually trade with Amon. But Artanis comes up and is just like, I've been doing this shtick for years. I know what I'm doing.
how about this? I'll say that we can put Artanis in C for now, and then see where he ends up later when more commanders are put in. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't think either of you agree with this, but
I don't think we're ever going to agree on this because like Tutu has absolutely no confidence in Artanis' abilities.
And again, the randomness of the RNG with power overwhelming makes us have wildly different experiences with different commanders.
It really does.
So
there's no standardization in the experience here. I remember the first
I've never had
time
a Brutalist abducted.
Yeah.
Ow. Yeah. Okay.
I've never had a Brutalist abducted. At least not at a point where it mattered.
It might actually be immune to abduct because of the heroic tag, actually.
Yeah.
However, I have had them die to Black Hole and Fungal way too often when playing Abthor against Power Overwhelming. I remember, you want to know a real crazy case of Power Overwhelming variants? The first time I played against Power Overwhelming, the first mutator we had with Power Overwhelming ever, because I was back in the beginning of Mutations, I managed to get a run where I did not see a single black hole. I have no idea how I got so blessed by the RNG, but I did not see a single black hole all game.
Blessed be.
So that was impressive. And
you should have.
Yeah.
Do you have it on video?
No, that was like way before I did anything with video. This was like the beginning.
You know how the internet works, man.
I know, but the point is like. Literally, you can vary from a black hole every single wave to literally never seeing a black hole over the course of the entire mission. Either one can happen. One of those is just a nightmare. One of those is, what was the mutation again?
Well,